microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read two sources together. Whenever I try to prove out, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get...
Good evening, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is the Ochelli Effect, just like all that noisy bumper has to say. And I am your host, Chuck Ochelli, back once again, despite the fact that I don't think everybody's so happy with me lately. But that's okay. It's Tuesday night, and that means that, of course, it's Tuesday night with the Liberty Beacon. And always I am privileged and honored and happy and content to present in the first hour Roger Landry. The second hour, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm hoping that you guys will call in during that time. So if you're on my Skype list, you can Skype me and I will add you into the conversation. If not, you can call 718-717-8296. I will do the same. Anyhow, like I said, Roger is usually right with us during the first hour, and let's just see if the Skype cooperates with us tonight, and I can bring Roger on. Anyhow, as I said, this is the normal Tuesday night broadcast, and there's Roger. I hear a little noise, so I know I've got him. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, I've had better and worse days in my life, I suppose. You ever notice I never tell you that I'm doing real good, Roger?
I'm kind of used to that. I think if you ever said, gee, Roger, I've just had one of the greatest freaking days I've ever had in a long time, I'd probably fall off my chair.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of notes really quickly here. I want to say happy birthday to my son, who is named after me. I think he's listening. So, Charlie, happy birthday to you. Born on Veterans Day, and, of course, happy Veterans Day to everybody. And, of course, this is something that we should all take at least a moment to recognize on this particular day, the individuals who have given their lives, their limbs, and even their very souls in the pursuit of defending what was once a great country, and I do not hold soldiers accountable for the terrible mistakes that have been made by those who actually pulled the strings, and I want to make that very clear before I say anything else tonight. Anyhow, sorry, Roger, I just wanted to get that out of the way, and of course, like I said, this is the Tuesday night with the Liberty Beacon. And you are the founder of the Liberty Beacon, which is just over 2 years old, but is expanding by leaps and bounds constantly. I don't know what it is you want to bring up tonight necessarily outside of the article that we're going to discuss. But how are things going? I mean, is there any other interesting announcements in the world of the Liberty Beacon that you want to bring to people's attention?
Oh, we're doing some things I would absolutely love to announce, but then I'd have to kill myself. No, we have some projects. We do have some projects going on right now that cannot be discussed, and that's worth explaining in itself. There are some things that governments and government agencies should be responsible for, such as protecting this nation, such as protecting our health, such as protecting us from products that would do harm to us, such as, and I could give you a list as long as my arm. We do know that if we talk today about the EPA, the FDA, the CDC, the USDA, and I could go on and on about just about any government agency, that they are chock full of complicity and corruption to the point where the revolving doors between criminal enterprises like big pharmaceutical, biotech industries, chemical industries, military industrial complex, the revolving doors are spinning so fast that you could do serious harm if you tried to walk through them. But yet we see a constant shifting of personnel between these government agencies and the big cabals that literally own them or pull the strings. So it is left up to organizations like the Liberty Beacon Project and some other great organizations and foundations out there to do the things that these government agencies with massive budgets failed to do. Obvious things that are just obvious to you and me they need to do to protect us. They need to do to protect our health. They need to do to protect our liberties, and they're just not doing. So there are several projects going on in the Liberty Beacon Project right now that once they come to fruition, believe me, I will be heralding them from the highest treetop, the highest mountaintop, in the loudest voice I can muster, and you and I both know that's pretty damn loud. But at this point in time, all I can do is sit here and wish I could talk about them. But 6 to 8 months down the road, which, and a lot of these projects, especially if they're based on scientific studies, require a lot of time. Because if we make even one small mistake, they will use it to rip the rug right out from under us and knock us off our feet. So we have to cross every T, dot every I, but there are several projects going on within the Liberty Beacon Project that are absolutely groundbreaking and earth-shattering. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of this project. Other than that, we've got a couple of new websites going up over the next month. Of course, the radio network is expanding, and you ought to know that probably just about as good as anybody else, considering you're our media director. But the project is, basically as you described it, but I would go a step further and say it's growing under its own weight now. It's not a matter of me having to go out and make connections. It's not a matter of me having to go out and sell this project to people so much anymore as people knocking on our door and saying, would you like to play with us? Or what can we do to play on your field? And This is very rewarding to us because it shows that we have reached a point of recognition.
No, absolutely. One of those projects that I think we can discuss just a little bit is the Middle East Rising website, which is on its way, and I know that that's okay to discuss at the moment. But this is going to give us a wholly different view regarding the situations in the Middle East as they do continue to evolve, in the mainstream and in the alternative streams. We're watching, the manipulation of the news, the manipulation of information, the speculation over whether, al-Baghdadi is dead, and et cetera, and all this nonsense. Most of the time from experts, supposed, I put in quotes, alleged experts that are sitting there behaving as analysts without the benefit usually of anyone on the ground other than a bought and paid for reporter who is reading a script which has nothing to do with what they're actually physically seeing. So we're going to change the game regarding the Middle East reporting situation right there, aren't we?
Oh yeah, and I'm so glad that you even brought up what you just brought up, because I just published an article today, a short article I wrote called CIA and Mainstream Media, a journalist/whistleblower's story. And it is about a Western journalist. He's actually writes for or wrote for the leading newspaper in Germany. And basically what he did was he came out of the closet as a whistleblower and has dumped on the CIA like you would not believe. And this is a mainstream media reporter who had a lot of credibility for many years. And what you say is so apropos because when you consider that the excuse we used to go in and start to bomb the infrastructure of Syria is to eradicate a group that we funded, that we were fighting alongside for a period of time, and we still are funding and supporting via mechanisms such as the CIA. So these are enemies that we used as an excuse to go in and do what we always wanted to do in the first place, which was to go in and topple the Syrian regime. And we're using as an excuse a construct of the CIA, which is part of the American structure. So it is basically American-built, American-supported, America trying to kill while America is still funding. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Well, you know what? It makes perfectly good sense to me, Roger.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, if you create your own enemy, it makes it so much easier to target, control, and actually make sure that you assure yourself victory at the correct time. And meanwhile, all of this information, again, up with the air quotes on radio, but all of this information, as we observe from history, ladies and gentlemen, has been controlled. I mean, we know about Mockingbird. We know about the various different titles that have been given to the intelligence agencies' control over the news media so that they can completely control the public narrative regarding these discussions, regarding the information. This is the reality that we live in and have lived in for some time. This is actually nothing new, folks. And if you don't have an enemy, of course, it's rather convenient if you just continuously manufacture some on the side, and every once in a while you bring them into the media spotlight. Excuse me, you bring them into the media spotlight, and there you go. Voila, we have ISIS, ISIL, whatever it is you want to call them. IS, the is, right? What's the meaning of is? Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, right. Growing from the Mujahideen, who we, absolutely backed, manufactured. Foreign invaders that were actually sitting in Afghanistan that were utilized, in order to further the whole agenda regarding surrogate warfare against the great Soviet Empire, which ostensibly collapsed at one point, but don't tell them that. The thing is... all of this stuff is continuous. This is the way it goes, and of course, it's also convenient to reintroduce the menace of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who obviously knows how to use Twitter a lot better than I do, Roger, because he's able to tweet out these interesting and wonderful, revolutionary, blazing ideas about wanting to destroy Israel, as if this was not the same exact thing that has been said since the 1970s. For those of you who have not been alive that long. I do recall the Iranian hostage crisis. I do recall the unrest. I do recall.
You were a baby when that happened.
But I remember it. You see, my father, and I brought this up last night because yesterday actually would have been my father's birthday had he still been alive. But the fact is that the man taught me how to read newspapers first. This is what he taught me how to read. So believe it or not, the very first thing I ever remember knowing how to read, in sentence form after the ABCs were all done and all that, was about the residual effects from the Watergate scandal. Because I was 3 years old, and there it was. I had no idea what who the players really were, or what was actually going on, but I could sort of follow the story. And it was only a few years later that we were, confronted by that whole narrative regarding the fall of the embassy and all this other stuff that went on, and the hostage crisis, which was counted out on a daily basis in all the mainstream media, whether you were listening to radio or watching television or reading newspapers. They had a daily count as to how many days the hostage crisis had gone on and all that. And I'm sure you recall that as well, Roger.
Oh, my God, yes. That was paraded in front of us on a magnitude that just I actually think nothing to this day has been played up like that was.
No, it hasn't. And of course, that was before the days when we were confronted with the 6, now just about 5, media organizations that actually control the entire alphabet soup, right? This was this was a little earlier on, and they still had, of course, that then we get into how they seized upon the idea of hijacking and all these other wonderful things that were constantly being utilized as sort of a fear tactic. But, of course, at that time, the great boogeyman was really the Soviet Union. So that was sort of the side story. That was the crazy story over there that we never really needed to get ourselves involved with. But don't worry, in the future it'll become a problem. Well, they had that right. It has become a problem in the future. Unfortunately, it's one that, the flames which we have personally stoked, by the means of our own intelligence agencies, et cetera, right? But I digress, don't I, Roger?
Well, you don't digress, because I've made a comment before. Actually, I might have made it on your show last week, and I've made it several other times before, which a lot of people pull back from, but I have a lot of statistics and a lot of proof to back up. I have stated that the United States of America is a clear and present danger to every single nation on this planet. And I absolutely mean that, either via the mechanism of military intervention or the mechanism of military blackmail. When you consider there are 196 nations on this planet, and we have military forces in at least 170 plus of them. Stop and think about that. And any country that we want something from, if they don't willingly give it up to us, and I'm not talking when I say us, I'm not talking about you, Chuck, or me, or anybody else listening to this show. I'm talking about the oligarchs who pull the strings of our quote-unquote leaders in this country. Whatever they wish, they will ask for it. If you say no, and I'm speaking of leaders of other nations, sovereign nations around this planet, if you say no, the next thing they will do is they will tell you, okay, well, if you don't, we'll find a way to topple your government and put a puppet government in. And if you say, well, I dare you go ahead and try, then we will bomb you back to the frickin' Stone Age and go in and take whatever we want anyway. We are the most ruthless, the most militaristic nation that has ever existed on this planet. We have military mechanisms in well over 3/4 of the nations on this planet. Why? We can't even afford to feed our own poor. We can't even afford good medical care anymore. But yet we can control the biggest stick on the block. And if you don't do what we say, that stick's coming upside your head before you ever even know what happened.
And you know what I find terribly interesting about that, Roger, of course, is not only do we have the conventional and easily identifiable military forces in, you're counting 170, at last count I took, it was about 160 something, but either way, let's not argue.
Actually, if you do a Google search, there's anywhere between 196 and 202 countries on this planet, but that changes by the definition of what's actually a country and what isn't a country. So the low end is 196, which is the figure I usually use. The high end is 202.
So actually, I'm being way too generous at 160. I mean, that was literally the last count I had. But then again, maybe, I've just actually been a little lazy and not re-researched it because I think it's profound enough at 160. But you're probably exactly right. And here's the other thing, though. Not only do we have those easily identifiable places where we are in nations and nation states that do exist typically and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't even account for the various regimes and rebellions that we funded. It doesn't account for the the drop-ins of the special forces who are there to instruct various groups. Okay, and I'm being generous.
Or special forces that are in countries who aren't aware that they have American special special forces within their sovereign borders.
Well, there you go. Like I said, undeclared. You see, there's a lot of undeclared action in the world as well. Even in peacetime, you'll discover that there's all sorts of intervention by the intelligence agencies, by the military, all of this stuff under a cloak of secrecy as well. And that is the rest of the story, okay?
Well, what that has done, and that leads right into this article for today.
Yep.
What that has done is it has soured a lot of what we call the third world, or the poorest of this world, against the United States and what are called the first world, or the industrialized nations.
Right.
The name of the article for today is 2/3 of the world vow to push back against America and the New World Order.
Which I dropped into chat a few minutes ago for those watching in the chat room. So, go ahead.
Well, let's go through this because it's got a little bit of girth to it. It won't take too long. But I'm sure there's going to be a lively conversation after it, okay? I wrote this as a commentary, not as a, and I'm not going to tell you that the research isn't there, because it is, and there is a direct link to the article it is based on. And a lot of this also is based on things that I have seen over the 3 generations I have existed on this planet. But why is the G77 representing 133 countries facing off against America, the United Nations, and the New World Order? Aren't we being told daily that this is a good thing? The New World Order, a mechanism to unite the globe for a better, richer future for all of humanity? Or could it be this is more elitist propaganda and lies meant only to placate and pacify us into complacency and conformity? There are a couple of excerpts I put into this from other articles where I felt the information pertinent. The first one was published on June 17, 2014 in Bolivia. The American and European media are doing everything they can to hide the news that came out of that event. It's not going to stay a secret for long. As of this weekend, and of course this is June 17th, there's a new world order on Earth, and its enemy is the United States, the European Union, the UN, Security Council, and the world's shadow government led by the IMF and the WTO. This new alliance of poor countries wouldn't be much of a threat, except it includes 2/3 of the world's nations, including China and India, which are the 2 most populous nations on the planet.
Right.
This is 133 nations flipping the bird to the United States, NATO, and the United Nations. The second excerpt I put in here. When the richest and most powerful nations on Earth formed the G7, G8, and G20 and the like, they united to to combine their dominance over the remaining 175 countries on this planet. And that's what makes up humanity. And for decades, the wealthiest 20 countries led by the U.S. have gotten exponentially more wealthy at the expense of the poorest 175 nations, who in turn have gotten even poorer. That's been the result of the New World Order, led mainly by self-appointed global governments like the International Monetary Fund and the World Trade Organization. That is the New World Order.
Okay. And, of course, the G20 is coming up in Australia, in less than a week, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So let me ask you a question. I talked about 133 nations pushing back against the United States and the New World Order and the UN. So is this scenario reality? Can you for 1 minute really believe that the pushback we see in the American liberty movement and from all those who are concerned about America's sovereignty, it is confined to the USA? Do you believe that a liberty movement is confined to the USA? Nation after nation in this so-called third world has been raped of their strategic resources and wealth by the cabal of elitist individuals who controls the United States, the United Nations, the World Bank, or the International Monetary Fund, with little to no regard for their sovereignty to most of what we term the third world. This is the New World Order, what I just described to you. In the eyes of the majority of the world, America is the head of the snake or the lead puppet. Via the absolute control of the UN and other powerful global organizations, including the most powerful war machine this world has ever known, the U.S. military, these elitists and their puppets, the U.S. and the UN leaders, wreak havoc and blackmail upon the globe, going anywhere and taking whatever fancies them with no real fear of repercussions. This scenario is especially true for those nations without the wealth or sufficient military assets to prevent these incursions into their sovereignty. Deny them what they wish and suffer the consequences of lies, such as, we are absolutely sure Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Propaganda and swift military action. That's the course of the day. Did anybody in their right mind really believe something like this was not inevitable over time? That these nations would not band together to say, we've had enough of your crap? America has fallen so far from a nation the world used to look up to for protection against the tyrants or abject tyranny to a nation of tyrants and abject tyranny. With the dollar about to collapse as the global reserve currency, this is an inevitability. The only surefire mechanism for these elitists to maintain any semblance of global control would be through the mechanism of global warfare. The next observe I put in here, the world's BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and there's more, but those are the lead nations, have publicly declared their goal of replacing the corrupt U.S. dollar with some other global default currency. Now that Russia and China have finally taken actual steps to do that, the remaining two-thirds of the world will most likely begin making preparations to stop using the dollar as well. It was only this weekend, again, that was June 17th, that 133 of them pledged to do just that. Listen to me, people, well over two-thirds of the nations on this planet have already agreed to dump the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency. The most important part of all this hoopla for you and me is that both Washington and Wall Street have assured us this will never happen. Because if it did, it would destroy the U.S. economic system and possibly the U.S. itself. Do you doubt for even 1 minute that if faced with this inevitable scenario, the war option would not be used? You know it would. Who do you think would instigate and lead this tyranny, already possessing the most powerful military in existence? Yes, my friends, it will be the U.S. military and its minions, such as NATO, bringing death and destruction on an unparalleled scale across the globe. If you don't believe this, then ask yourself why the U.S. military already has special forces stationed in, some say, over 150, and I will tell you close to 170 countries across this planet. Why? Why are they there if this is not an inevitability? How would it feel to wake up one day on the wrong side of World War III? America is now seen, feared, as the old USSR used to be seen, feared, as a serious threat to all who must bow to her fiat economic and massive military might and blackmail. Only more so than the old USSR ever was, because there is, or there used to be, no other entity that could stand up to her. Please tell let me reiterate that blatant point. The majority of this world hates and fears the United States of America. This is not the rant of an old man. This is reality today. It is not you and I that have perpetrated the evil resulting in this scenario, but it is reality. We must raise our voices and let the world know that it is not the American people they should hate and fear, but in fact those who control America's leaders, the puppet masters who in fact control this new world order.
Right. And you know...
What did I say wrong there, Chuck?
Nothing. I'm going to tell you that here's the weird thing that comes up. When I try to state, not quite as well as what you just stated here, what's going on in the world, when I talk about the legitimate grievances that are had by various nations because of the bullying, we have gone from being, the world police. Remember when they used to use that term all the time, we're the policemen for the world?
Yep.
Okay. Now we are still the policemen for the world, but the cops are now crooked, okay?
Wait a minute. Can't we draw a direct analogy to what we see happening to what used to be peace officers and are now law enforcement officers within the confines of our own country? Isn't that called a police state?
See, that's exactly where I was going.
Sorry.
Not a problem. But,
Sorry,
but no, it's fine. Perfect. Okay. But let me tell you what happens to these people who still believe that there is a difference between the red tie and the blue tie. Let me tell you what happens to the people that still believe that, the elephants that follow each other, holding each other's tails by the trunks, are still a possibility for their salvation, or the jackasses one way or the other. And I always forget which one is red and which one is blue, because it really doesn't matter. It's all purple. Okay? But here's the thing.
That's good, Chuck.
Here's the thing, though. They look at me with a straight face and they say stuff like, well, you're a guy who enjoys history. You're a guy who understands history. Well, wouldn't this actually be a good thing? I say, what do you mean? And they say, well, we had the Great Depression. So they recognize we have, a serious economic problem here, which, of course, is supposedly getting better. I'd like to know where, though, Roger. I really would. Because I don't see it on the ground. I don't see it regarding the job market. I don't see anybody recovering. I don't see opportunity rising in this country. I don't see the economic woes actually changing. Ever since 2008, we took such a crippling blow. We have not recovered from it yet. The only reason why the unemployment numbers have dropped is because they're being manipulated. We know this. And, of course, where they're not being manipulated, they're not being counted anymore, because if you're not collecting unemployment because it has been limited, you're no longer unemployed. You simply don't exist. So that's all fine and dandy, right? They say to me that after the Great Depression, of course, we had an economic upswing because of World War II. And they say, well, all of that manufacturing that took place and all of that stuff that happened, that was actually an economic engine which drove this country into a great time of prosperity. And therefore, wouldn't it be a good thing if we actually engaged ourselves in this type of activity and actually participated in the Third World War? It would actually solve the economic crisis that we currently find ourselves in. And I am so dumbfounded.
Can you tell me who these people are? Because I would just like to go and give them an itch slap with a bee. I really would, and I would like to deliver it personally. That is the most insane thing. What we have today are mechanisms of warfare that so far outstrip what we used to have when we fought World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnamese War. What we have today, and if you don't think a nation that is as corrupt as the leadership is in this country via the puppet masters would not use any mechanism of destruction to ensure victory, what we're looking at is the eradication of a massive portion of this global population in the event of World War III. That's not a guess. That's an inevitability. So where's this new economic growth going to come from?
Well,
and who's going to be alive to enjoy it?
See, that's the only logical thing that I've got to say there is absolutely, if there's less people on the planet, I guess there's less places for the resources to go. Oops, wait a minute. That sounds familiar, Roger.
Yeah.
And
it's called culling the herd.
Yeah, of course. And this is one of the mechanisms that used to be used, but it's really improved. It's actually an absolute certainty that we're now talking about weapons of mass destruction, which are in the hands of so many regimes. And truthfully, I mean, the United States, I'm not going to say we. I can't use the we anymore because I don't feel as though I'm part of the we, so I can't say it. So it's grammatically incorrect. Okay, but the United States military-industrial complex is in possession of so many different weapons, far outstripping anything that we saw in the 20th century at this point. The acceleration of the technology is so far beyond any of that. Okay, even the ridiculousness, let's go back to a little bit of recent history and think about this. The fact that they had a camera on their smart bombs, in Desert Storm was a big hoop-de-doo, right? This was a big sort of huge innovation in technology, right? The joke where you could actually, watch the bombs, and they were sitting there watching the movies of it, and I believe they did. But here's the thing. This is no longer like that. It's not even like it was in the 90s. We're talking about stuff that is absolutely horrendous. If you don't think they perfected the germ warfare, if you don't think they perfected the biochemical warfare, well, wait a minute. They did. They used us as test subjects anyway here to make sure that they knew how to control the population. And, of course, the sickly population doesn't fight back too well, as we learned over time. Go ahead.
We step so far beyond that, even. I mean, germ warfare is antiquated. Biological warfare, antiquated. Gas warfare, antiquated. Pathogens, forget about it. We're talking about being able to drive tornadoes, hurricanes, gale force winds, torrential rains. We're talking about being able to control the weather. We're talking about particle weapons that have been in space orbiting this planet for a very, very long time. We're talking about microwave weapons. We're talking about what is actually available. Okay? Everything else is on the table. All of the conventional weapons we would use today are on the table. But let's put this into perspective. If it is the United States and NATO, which comprises of basically 30% of the world's population, all of a sudden finds itself at odds, okay, with 2/3 of the world's population. I don't care how good your bombs are, how many missiles you have, how many tanks you have, and if you combine the Soviet Union and China and India's armies, you will find that they far outstrip the standing armies of all of NATO and the U.S. put together. I'm not saying that they are as modern, although that's questionable. What I'm saying is that they have a much larger military force. So now all of a sudden we wake up tomorrow and we find out we're on the wrong side of World War III, which is what I mentioned in my commentary. We are facing 2/3 of the world's population and massive standing armies. Mm-hmm. It will be for a very short period of time that you will see only conventional weapons used. When it is realized that the tide of humanity, it was stated when I was a child 50 years ago that you could line everyone in China up together 6 abreast and start to march them into the ocean. And just by the fact that it would take so long and children being born, you would never, ever, ever come to the end of that line. That population was 2/3 of what it is today.
Right.
So now we're talking about standing armies that, between those three nations, that rival the populations of some large countries on this planet. Conventional weapons would be used for a very short period of time. And when the massive amount of humanity was swarming over NATO and the United States, they would go to these other weapons, which would produce massive amounts of death. But I still believe at that point we would still not have a clear-cut advantage. And the final card in the deck, and something the United States has already planning on, would be the use of nuclear weapons? Why, when the Soviet Union crumbled and Russia became a friend and a trading partner to the United States, did we continue to build a missile shield in Eastern Europe? And we are to this day. Why? Because the United States feels, through utter idiocy, that they can succeed in a limited nuclear strike. We might have the most accurate weapons. We might have the ability to take out a 50, 60, 70, even 80% of the Soviet Union, Russia or China's missile capability. But if even 20% of China's or Russia's missiles get through, it would take less than 10% of the combined arsenals, less than 10% of their combined arsenals, to throw the entire planet back into the Stone Age and wipe humanity off this planet. This country already has strategic plans for a first strike nuclear capability.
And I'll tell you something else, just to go back to a point that you made earlier. The Chinese alone, you don't even need to go beyond them. Okay, the Chinese alone have the strategic advantage regarding any conventional warfare. They have more bodies than we can possibly come up with.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Their standing army is bigger than the population of most states in this country.
Right. I mean, and somebody cited in the chat room 750 million people. I think it's larger, actually.
China has over 1 billion people.
Well, I'm saying the standing army would be...
Oh, their standing army? If you count all of their military, their National Guard, and their emergency forces, I would say that it might come close to 500 or 600 million people. It might even be that high. But they aren't actual trained front-of-the-line troops. But that doesn't matter, because I would tell you that the Chinese would start frothing at the mouth, and there would be nothing you could do to stop them. They would, just like they did in Korea, they would come wave after wave after wave until you've got no more bullets to fire. And then you're dead.
That's exactly what would happen in a conventional sense. And the amount of being outnumbered, I mean, I forget what the statistics are on what we have as a standing military at this point, but it's absolutely minuscule compared to that.
It's like 240,000, I believe.
Yeah.
That's all of our standing military.
Right. It's like nothing. It's like nothing.
Compared to what they have.
It's as if you turned a street gang loose in a small American city, and everybody in the city came out of their houses to deal with them. It really wouldn't matter if they had guns or anything else. If they had just their bare hands, they would be overwhelmed and swarmed, point blank. This is exactly the kind of scenario I envision, and I think it's pretty accurate, Roger.
But you've got to consider that in this third world country in South America, 133 nations got together and decided they had it with the United States, the United Nations, the World Health, the WTO, the World Bank, and the EU, and basically they were going to do whatever they could to collapse the New World Order, because the New World Order that we all push back against has existed since the 1950s.
Mm. And the truth here is that, for those that think, well, China couldn't possibly support this, all they would need is one ally, and it looks to me like India could do that just fine.
Soviet Union is, look, they're both BRICS nations. They have, they're cooperating on military projects. They're cooperating on economic projects. They're cooperating on scientific projects. I would tell you that if World War III broke out, you would see the BRICS nations instantly form up against the Western world.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying that in order to win a conventional war, you wouldn't even require the Russian Federation's intervention. They could actually sit it out. If you think about it.
If nuclear weapons aren't used, I would agree.
Oh, yeah.
If they are used, I would believe that the United States does have a strategic and a scientific advantage over both the Soviet Union and China, still at this point. I believe that if nukes are used, we will totally devastate China. We will totally devastate Russia and her satellite nations. But even if, and I believe I did a show with you about 2 months ago where I stated that 1% of the world's nuclear weapons is all it would take to kill all life on the surface of this planet. Mm-hmm. It would block the sun out for at least a decade, and nothing that requires photosynthesis to live would survive, and humanity would starve. Something like 90% of humanity would starve within the first year, and over the next 9 years, you would see the other 10% go away. So we're talking about 1%. Any nation that feels that they have a strategic enough advantage to initiate a nuclear exchange is basically pulling the plug on humanity.
Mm-hmm. And this is the point. And I mean, but this is why I find it laughable that they're so concerned about Iran and their ability to possibly create a nuclear weapon. I mean, first of all, I can guarantee you that they already have possession of one, at the very least. Okay, because this is why I think we haven't actually.
Where would they have gotten it from?
Well, it's not hard. It's not hard, Roger. This stuff, I mean, look, you or I could really, if we did a little bit of research, we could get the schematics to build one of these things without a problem.
Yeah, but you've got to enrich the uranium. It requires. It's a little tougher than that, but I do understand what you're saying. I'm telling you, if they have a bomb right now, they didn't build it themselves.
Oh, of course.
If they have a bomb right now, they got it from China.
Well, or they could have possibly purchased it during the time that the Soviet Union was disbanding, because there's still plenty of those weapons unaccounted for.
Absolutely.
So
that was my next comment. See, now you're finishing my comments.
Sorry, but
no, don't apologize. I like this.
It is what it is. I mean, that's the reality of what happened here. And you know what? That's the kind of thing that nobody's talking about anymore, is that we still don't have a full accounting for what happened to all those weapons, do we? I mean,
it's not only those that aren't accounted for. When you count the nuclear powers on this planet, Israel is never included in that count. And I can tell you right now that I firmly believe that Israel has between 80 and 120 nuclear warheads at this point, and maybe even more. There are some who say it could be over 200. But nobody ever says, and Israel has never admitted to being a nuclear power, so nobody ever counts them as a nuclear power. One of the biggest fears that a lot of nations within that region who hate Israel has kept them from invading Israel, because Israel is not a very populous nation. It's not a very large nation. It's smaller than New Jersey. It could be overrun by the hostile nations they're surrounded by. But these nations are well aware that Israel is a nuclear power. And do you think for 1 second Israel would be would refrain from using even a limited nuclear strike to protect its existence?
Yeah, well, there you go. And, I don't know exactly what Israel has acknowledged, but they are often left out of the discussion, that's for sure, regarding the sort of strategic map and nuclear weapons. This has been, an obvious. I mean, look, the other thing is that because of our support of the nation state of Israel, this has also led to even greater sort of resentment throughout the world. This has been a continuous sore spot in many, many countries. And believe me, I was hearing about this a long time ago from people from some of those other places, like Lebanon, like Syria, individuals who actually lived in those countries prior to coming to the United States. You speak to them firsthand, and even back in the 80s and 90s, they would tell you that all of the resentment toward the Western world basically resides with the fact that the United States completely has supported the nation state of Israel. And this is also something that's always left out of the discussion, right?
Oh yeah, but let's take it a little step further. Do you know that there's a bill in Congress, and the bill specifically states, actually it's past Congress, it's in the Senate now, and the bill specifically states it is not acceptable to talk about the Jews when expressing disapproval or frustration over political events in the Middle East or elsewhere. It will soon be illegal for you to tie Israel to any tyranny on the planet. This is a freaking bill that passed through Congress and is now in the Senate, making it illegal for you and me to write an article condemning Israel for, say, what they did in Gaza. That will become illegal. So basically we have an Israeli lobby that is stripping you and I as American citizens of our freedom of speech. I'm not joking about this. Would you like to know what the bill number is? I don't say things I can't back up.
But please do let people know what bill that number that is. I heard this discussion. Of course, we're all familiar with the fact that we have a vice president who
House
happily...
Resolution 707.
707. But we also have a vice president who is happy to proclaim that he is a Zionist, sir. This is, Mr. Biden. Okay, so VP Biden likes to go out and tell us that he is a Zionist and that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. He's happy to tell us that. Of course, this week we were also greeted with him staking his entire reputation on the fact that there will be no way that they will allow Iran to have one of these nuclear weapons. Just so you know, like, be prepared for that. Talk about pre-predictive programming, right?
House Resolution 707
Yep.
is condemning all forms of anti-Semitism and rejecting attempts to justify anti-Jewish hatred or violent attacks as an acceptable expression of disapproval or frustration over political events in the Middle East or elsewhere. The 113th Congress. Okay? And I've got to tell you, if you go to the article on the Liberty Beacon, and the article is called Jewish Criminal Protection Bill. Stop it in the Senate now. It gives a list of all of the representatives who signed this bill approving it and sending it to the Senate. The list is so long, I don't even want to start to read it at this point.
You know what? I want to find a link to that article really quick and drop it out there for everybody. Because
I'll put it on Skype for you right now.
Yeah, please do, because I'm telling you right now, this is one of those things that is not often mentioned.
No, and people need to understand the old man doesn't just say crazy things off the top of his head. I say things that I can back up. You've got it right now, Chuck.
Okay, beautiful. I'm going to grab that for everybody and put that into the chat, because definitely necessary to see this stuff for yourself.
Not only is the Jewish lobby the most powerful lobby this country has ever seen, not only do a very large percentage of all of our leaders carry a dual citizenship whereby they swear their undying loyalty to Israel and the United States, which is unconstitutional to start with. You cannot split how can you take an oath to the Constitution of the United States, swearing to uphold it against all evils, anything that would cause harm against the U.S., and then turn around and swear the exact same oath to the nation of Israel? We have one of the largest divided loyalties on this planet. We have more high-ranking officials in this country with dual citizenship with Israel. And if you ever do a Google search on that, your jaw is going to drop. Your jaw is going to drop. Israel exerts more control over the U.S. government than every other nation on this planet combined. I dare you to prove me wrong. I dare you to.
I know I can't.
And it's a country of, 7 or 8 million people the size of New Jersey? Give me a freaking break!
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And this is one of those scary things, like I said, that just and look, let's just take this from a real basic sort of point, right? Let's just look at it in the most fundamentally simple way. How is it that, one divides their loyalties? And in the case of a contradiction in those loyalties,
what do you do?
Then that would what do you do? Flip a coin?
What do you do? Okay?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Why do you think that we, as a general public, I'm not talking about people like you and me who dig on the internet and we go for the actual meat of the story, why do you think a vast majority of this country believes, right to the core of their being, that Israel had to do what they had to do? They lost, a couple of hundred people, whereas Gaza lost thousands of people, hundreds of children, was bombed back to the Stone Age. Entire neighborhoods were bombed to actual gravel.
Yes, bombed.
Gravel.
Bombed, bulldozed, had, missile strikes on them and everything else.
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But yet, we have a nation that believes that Israel had to do this. They have one of the most powerful and modern militaries on the planet today. And what do you have in Gaza? You have some rockets that are basically 4th of July freaking rockets that have no real accuracy at all. They can't be aimed. They launched them, and wherever they hit, they hit. Okay? And they don't have tanks. They don't have missiles. They don't have F-15s, F-16s. They don't have none of this stuff. None of it. Okay?
Right.
But yet we have a nation that firmly believes that the full-scale slaughter of Palestinians during this uprising, quote unquote, Israeli called it an uprising, okay, was justified. Why is it justified? Well, like I asked you all to do before, I'm going to ask you to do it again. Go and Google how many high-ranking officials, and I'm talking about very high-ranking officials in the U.S. government and military, have dual citizenship between Israel and the United States. So where does loyalty lie?
Right, and this is exactly the point. I don't, okay, you know what? It's funny because
I'm not anti-Jewish, Chuck.
No.
I'm not. I really am not, and anybody who accuses me of that, you're a freaking liar.
I'll tell you something else.
I'm anti-Zionist.
Right, and anti-Semitism is a misnomer in and of itself anyway, Roger.
Yes, it is.
Because the Semitic people, okay, are not the people who actually control the nation state of Israel at this point in time.
No, they don't. The Zionists control the state.
Right. But who are Semitic people, technically?
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they?
Well, I'll tell you, these are the people that are actually protesting in Israel against what happened in Gaza.
Well, not only that, but maybe I'm off on this, but don't the Palestinian people count as Semitic people?
Yeah, in fact, they do.
I thought that was the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another label that's been put on something and given a negative connotation. You don't hear pro-Semitic people. You only hear the term anti-Semitic people. Okay?
Right.
It's a label, it's a title, and it has been attached to a very negative thing that when you hear it, the first thing you do is cringe and go, oh, that must be a bad person. When in fact, you know what? It's propaganda. It's control. It's the very control of our language.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was exactly the point I was going. Because here we go again. What is the best way to shut down a debate but to apply a label that doesn't necessarily make sense but sounds insidious in nature? This is what the problem is. And I've stated this before, and I know this makes people uncomfortable, but I'm not happy with a lot of the organized Christian churches in this country because of this very reason. They have pushed the idea that supporting the nation state of Israel is equivalent to the support of Israel in their religious faith, which it is not the same thing. The nation state which exists at this point in time is not what it is they're telling you about in your Bible.
If you take a look on the internet and you do a little research, you will find there were many, many deeply Jewish believing people who rose up in protest against their government with what was happening in Gaza. Many people. And these were the most devout of the Jews because they firmly believe that they should be living in peace alongside the Palestinians, not killing them, not exterminating them. And I am not anti-Jewish in any way, shape, or form. What I am is anti-Israeli in a very large fashion. Because as you so aptly stated, Chuck, it is the Zionists who control Israel today. It is not the deeply faithful Jewish portion of that nation.
Well, right, and I actually went and entered this phrase into a search engine: dual citizens in Congress, list of representatives. Okay.
Well, you just put Congress. I'm talking about heads of agencies, heads of committees, heads of advisors to the president. I would type in dual citizenship involved in U.S. government today. You're going to get a much bigger list.
Okay. Well, see, this is why I need you to this is why I need you to help me out here.
Congress is long enough, but what you're going to find out is the list grows a lot longer when you associate presidential advisors, when you associate all of the other agencies associated with the government and the heads of those agencies. You're going to find out that a lot of them have dual citizenship. So the list you're going to have over just Congress grows quite a bit more.
Yeah, actually it does. We see stuff included in the Department of State. We see individuals in, well, of course, the Congress. Let's see, White House.
Advisors.
Advisors, yeah. Of course, this includes a whole lot of phrases like, should we be worried? Let's see. In the Bureau of Consular Affairs.
Yes, the Consular Affairs, absolutely. Yep. All over the planet, they are preaching the need to maintain the safety and the efficacy of the Israeli state, and that's not. Why the hell, for 1 second, would our consulates be preaching this to another nation?
Well, right, and I mean, and you take a look at this stuff, and it's all over the map. I mean, there is absolutely no entity of government, it seems as though, is not sort of under the thumb of these individuals in one way or another.
That's why I said don't restrict it to Congress, because what you're doing is you're omitting a huge chunk of that list.
See, my mistake there. I was just thinking about, the 500 and some odd, people that...
well, there's enough of them in there.
Oh, yeah, no, plenty of them. I mean, the 112th Congress, there was a minimum of 29 that they showed there, but of course that grew in the 113th Congress, and I think is growing a little more as we have, gone through our selection process once again.
Why is it that every serious political candidate, whether it was for vice president, a lot of governors, a lot of senators, a lot of presidential candidates, you see pictures of them at the Jewish shrines wearing the little beanie cap with their head bowed in silence. Why do they need to go to Israel and to Jerusalem to get the Jewish lobbies okay in order for them to win an election? If you think I'm kidding you, I dare you to go to any presidential, vice presidential, or a vast majority of the senatorial candidates over the last few years and look up. You will find pictures of them in Jerusalem praying at these Jewish shrines.
Yeah, and again, something that is not brand new. I do recall. You remember Mayor Rudy Giuliani, right?
Yep.
New York City mayor who wound up, exploding onto the national scene as a possible presidential candidate. Although this is my commentary alone, I'm sure Roger doesn't need to join in on this part here. But I don't think an Italian will actually be elected president in this country anytime soon. I think we'll have a woman first. But anyway, the thing is that, and I
won't say anything.
I have to get that in there. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that the American public could possibly even begin to endorse that idea. A black guy, yes. A woman, yes. Even a woman Catholic is a possibility. Although, we haven't had too many Catholic presidents.
No, I'm talking about a Roman Catholic. Well, Kennedy was Roman Catholic.
Well, right. But he didn't exactly last. No, but if you think back, okay, I think there's a whole lot of other firsts are going to happen long before we see somebody with a vowel at the end of their name taking over in the White House. But that's me again. The thing is that I do recall that this guy, who was, ostensibly a former district attorney, who was the mayor of New York City, who did, like I said, sort of come out to the forefront regarding being a possible presidential candidate, while constantly thrusting forth the narrative about 9/11. This guy even had to go to the Wailing Wall at one point, and you want to see something that looks completely unnatural. I'm sure that you can find these pictures on the internet somewhere of Rudolph Giuliani with the yarmulke on doing the same thing.
Every presidential candidate that I can remember has been there and had their picture taken at the Wailing Wall. Every vice presidential candidate, a lot of senators, a lot of high-ranking government officials and that have been appointed by a lot of administrations. You will see these pictures because they actively seek out the support of the Jewish lobby. Actively. They know that in order for them to rise to any level of power and authority in this country, they need the Jewish lobby behind them. That's where your damn dual citizenship comes in. That's what's cutting your throat. Right there.
Oh, right. And what is the point of all this, right? Why? And this,
Chuck, I wouldn't care if it was dual citizenship with Germany, or dual citizenship with England, or dual citizenship with Australia. When you put your hand on that Bible and swear an oath to the Constitution, it is an indivisible oath. It is an oath to this country, 100%. You are violating that oath if you have an oath with another sovereign nation. It is unconstitutional.
Well,
it should be illegal and never be allowed. Ever.
Right, exactly, and completely you can't even sort out the logic for me. I mean, and I know that you're great at doing that, but nobody can sort out the logic behind it. How is it that you swear your oath of loyalty to more than one place? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So this means, and I hate to pare this down and simplify it, but this means that there is literally like a batting order here regarding, exactly where your loyalty lies. And for those that, based on that alone, said that we should get rid of all these individuals that have the dual citizenship, I say this to you: good luck, because it appears as though they're everywhere. They're not just, in the positions in the Congress, as you pointed out, and I'm looking through this massive list of individuals all over the place, past and present, who had this dual citizenship. It's actually a much larger number than I actually thought. And
the Jewish lobby exercises more control over the U.S. government. And I apologize, I misstated. The Zionist Israeli lobby that exercises more control over the United States than the influences of the rest of the entire world combined.
Exactly. And then you wonder why it seems as though... See, we all know that they're selected. We all know it's a shell game. We all know that they're bought and paid for by their corporate masters. We all know this. But here's the interesting thing to me is that somehow or other, there are still a huge number of people that think it makes a difference between them. Because you notice we didn't talk about the Republicans that are occupied with this problem. We didn't talk about the Democrats that are occupied with this problem. It is not a red or blue problem, is it? It's, again, one of those purple problems, Roger.
I am so damn tired of the two-party joke in this country. When anybody asks me, well, what's your party affiliation? My party affiliation is the American people, period. If I had to state what my politics was closely aligned to, it would either be the Constitutionalist or the Libertarian Party. In some fashions, I take something from both of them. But I do not claim any party. And I do believe that the party system in this country is a mechanism of divisiveness. It's a mechanism of entertainment. It's a mechanism of distraction. It's a mechanism to keep us at each other's throats and entertained while everything that really needs to go on in the world by these oligarchs' opinion is actually happening. I firmly believe that this country will never, ever be free, will never exercise the true liberties that were put forth within the Constitution or stated within the Bill of Rights that are unalienable to us again until we get rid of the party system totally.
Well, exactly, and the two-party joke, exactly, because again, I say it's purple, it's all one thing, and what is easy to recognize is that like I say, the corporate masters definitely write the scripts, definitely write the legislation, definitely write the characters even of these individuals. I mean, the way that they behave, what they're allowed to say, what they're not allowed to say, their public sentiments, their press appearances, everything is actually controlled by these individuals. So the entire resonance of the game all resides with those interests. And at the same time, when you have this dual citizenship kind of thing going on, and like you said, and I'm glad you said it, it would not matter to me if these were dual citizens of Ecuador. They don't belong in positions of power in this country if they have anything other than this country's interests in their minds, in their agendas.
I not only agree, but I want to take the dual party system one step further. People ask me, well, explain the problems with the two-party system. Explain the faults. Explain what you think the two-party system is. My easiest and quickest analogy is pick up a quarter. Mm-hmm. Pick up a quarter. On one side, you're going to find a head. On the other side, you're going to find a tail. Okay? But they are both the exact same item. They are a quarter. Now let's take that analogy one step further. That quarter buys the same damn thing whether you slap it down on the counter with the head up or the tail up. I don't care which side of that, or the dollar bill, or the 50-cent piece, or the silver dollar. They both have heads, they both have tails. But when you put that damn thing down, it buys the exact same thing, no matter which side is up or which side is down. That's what we're facing, people. I don't care if it's the Republicans who have control or the Democrats who have control. It buys the same damn thing.
And it's also acquired exactly the same way, which is exactly the point here, is that, you know what, you get your quarter the same way, whether it's heads up or tails up. You receive it from the banks or the bankers. You receive it from the stores or the corporate extensions. You receive it all the same way too, don't you?
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if you're looking at the head or the tail of it. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the back or the front of the dollar bill. It still works the same way.
And it's only going to do what a 50-cent piece or a dollar bill or a silver dollar is going to do. Yep. It's only going to do one thing. I don't give a damn which side you present it. Whether you hand it to somebody with the heads up or the tails up, it's going to do the same thing. But yet, they would have you believe that there is a major... Hey, look, when Bush was in office, he's a Republican. The party of small government. Okay? Say something to me. Why did we see the largest growth in the federal government in the history of this country under George Bush? The only time this government has grown larger than under Bush was when Obama took over. Now let's go to Obama. He's a Democrat, right? They don't like wars. They don't like big corporations. More has been done to prop up big corporations, and more warfare has been conducted under Obama than any president in history. So you tell me the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans other than the way you spell the word.
There you go, and it's really like the poorly written sequels to a movie. It has all been the Bush agenda, I would argue, since a guy named Reagan actually held the office. But let's just leave that alone for a moment. What are we on? Part 6, Part 7? I don't know. I lose track because Jason always seems to hack people up and come back from the dead either way during these movies. Oh, I'm sorry, I mixed up my stuff. But it always seems to happen about the same way, regardless of what the scenario is. Whether he's at Camp Crystal Lake, or he's gone to Manhattan, or he's gone to the moon. It's still the same movie, isn't it?
Bush Sr. was the actual front runner in establishing the policy that has continued to this day, including attacking sovereign nations in the Middle East, including Bush Sr. started the ball rolling. But what is Bush Sr. a product of? Where did he get all of his fame, his knowledge, his power? Oh, gee, he used to run the CIA, didn't he?
Well,
my
yeah.
God! And let's talk about his counterpart. Let's go halfway around the world, okay? The most powerful individual in Russia. Where did he get all of his training? Where did he get all of his power? Where did he get all his backing? My God, he used to work within the hierarchy of the KGB.
Yes, he did. This is exactly right, and this is where the power actually resides at this point, is in the shadows of the government as opposed to the legitimate government that exists. This is exactly where the power actually is.
The corporations who own them.
Well, I would argue that that's a cyclical relationship because they own corporations and corporations own them, vice versa. It's all an incestuous...
It all climbs up to the few oligarchs who sit at the top of the pyramid, like the Rockefellers, like the Soros, like the Rothschilds, and the Gettys. And we can go down a line of oligarchs. There are but maybe 1,000 people who rule the world, and there are but maybe 50 who rule that group of people. I would tell you that the true oligarchs of this planet, you could count on the digits on your body.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people. I'm going to tell you that it is estimated, and I don't know this to be a fact, but I have been told this by some pretty good sources, that the Rothschilds, if you took everything they owned on this planet, their estimated value would exceed $100 trillion. The entire debt of every nation on this planet combined is less than $50 trillion. The Rothschilds family could pay off the debt of every nation on this planet to zero and still be the most powerful and richest entity this planet has ever seen. It wouldn't even cost them half their fortune.
And here we are, right back to the Zionism and the banking oligarchy, huh?
Oh, it always comes back to it's like one of them paddle balls. You smack that ball as hard as you can, and it goes way the hell out there. But inevitably, it's going to come back and hit that paddle again.
Well, so long as the string is attached, and in my estimation, the string is the...
What's the string?
It is the financial control system that is in place.
You jerked the words right out of my brain again.
See, and just so you know, Roger, shortly, and not like this moment, but in a few minutes, Barry Prince will join us too. Well,
I'm going to have to bow out in about 10 minutes. This is the longest I've ranted in quite a while, and not only is my voice shot, but I have a list of things that I absolutely need to do. But when Barry comes in, I will stick around long enough to say hello to him, because he is also a part of the Liberty Beacon Project, and that is one fine gentleman and an extremely good friend of ours, isn't he?
Well, Barry is one of the most interesting guys that I've ever talked to, inside or outside of this project. I've got to tell you, and he is just an amazing wealth of information, and definitely a guy who speaks right the same kind of language that I do. I mean, sometimes I speak a little too much from the gut and seem to upset people a little bit, but
I've long stopped worrying about who I upset. If you're going to listen to me only because I'm putting a warm fuzzy in you, you're listening to the wrong person.
Exactly. And you know what? Before I do forget, and before I get too far carried away with myself, yeah, you have been on a while with me, and I do appreciate all of your time, all of your effort, and anything that you can possibly think of about the oligarchy, about the development of and I don't use this phrase very often, but ladies and gentlemen, I'll use it right now, the New World Order, regarding the control systems, regarding tyranny, regarding all of the ugliness in the world, the scientific technocracy, which has also overshadowed humanity to this point.
I love that word.
All of these wonderful things that we are exposing, that we are showing light on, as if it was a room full of cockroaches and they need to scatter now. And the more light we shine on them, I promise you they will scatter. You can find information on all of this at thelibertybeacon, all one word, .com. There are just an endless assortment of articles, a lot of them written by Roger. And always fascinating when you read Roger's stuff, but many contributors, way too many to list, way too many interesting topics, way too many things that I have educated myself about at thelibertybeacon.com and also at thefallingdarkness, all one word, one more time, .com. They're both wonderful sites for reading. Of course, there's also TLB Town Crier, which tlbtowncrier.com, which is the radio network, which is still in its infancy, but it is on its way.
You know what I explained? Somebody asked me the other day to give them a status of the Liberty Beacon Radio Network, and this is what I told them. I said, you know what? The network is up, but we're crawling. But we're Olympic crawlers. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to expand the shows on the network, and we'll be walking, but we'll be power walking. And about the first of the year, or as we cross into the new year, we're going to start to trot. But I'm going to tell you something. We're going to be Olympic runners. So everything you see, as you so aptly put, Chuck, is in its infancy right now. But the reason why we're doing it in steps and we're doing it in a progressive fashion is because we don't want to be tripping all over ourselves. We don't want to be presenting things just because they'll fill airtime. We don't want to be saying things just because people want to listen to something. So this is a project that is going to far outstrip anything that's available out there within this realm. But it's going to be done in steps. It's a whole lot easier to climb a mountain if there's steps carved into it than it is to climb a mountain without steps. So we are notching our way up to what we know will be one of the most vibrant, most well-listened to, and most well-supported radio networks that independent and new media has ever seen.
Right, and all of it will be presented free as it is now, and it's just it's something that I can't even describe because it's very unique, and it is being developed in a unique fashion as well. So,
well, one of the things we're doing that other people are not doing, and I don't know if you've heard me mention this before either or not, but I don't think I've mentioned it on your show, is we're doing topic-specific shows. You can go to a lot of good, and there are a lot of good radio networks on the internet. And you can hear a show on GMOs every once in a while done by a talk show host who talks about a lot of other things. Or you can hear a show on geoengineering that's done by a talk show host who talks about a lot of other things. And I talk about everything, but I talk about these things every once in a while myself. On the Liberty Beacon Project radio network, you are going to have a GMO show every single week. At the same time, on the same day, you are going to have a vaccine show every single week. You're going to have a geoengineering show every single week. You're going to have, and we can go through all the topics that the Liberty Beacon Project pushes back against, and it's quite a list of topics, but we will have topic-specific shows done by experts such as Dr. David Lewis, who has a PhD in microbiology, like Dr. Rebecca Carley, who is an MD and has been studying health her entire life, like Christina England, who has been writing for 2 generations and has a very, very good global name. We're going to be providing topic-specific shows by people who actually have spent a good portion of their life studying this stuff. So that's one of the reasons why we will stand above a lot of these other radio network projects. Because we're going to give you, for the person who wants to know about GMOs, you will learn something every week in a GMO topic-specific radio show done by an expert in GMOs. So we like to say we step outside the box in everything we do. The radio network, Chuck, is no different.
Right, and of course there are new websites coming up all the time that across the planet, not just in this country, that are also linked to the Liberty Beacon as well. I did mention earlier the Middle East Rising website, which is still under construction.
Yes.
There are a whole lot of other things coming, too, that are going to be extremely exciting and interesting to follow. Let's not forget also, because I started talking about this many months ago, the Earthship Solution thing is going to be kicking off very, very shortly.
Mid-December.
Mid-December. Yep, I couldn't remember the exact date on that because I don't think I got one, but I knew it was coming up within the next 60 days or so.
Yep.
And the only reason why that was changed from say 6 months ago to now is that the way to properly harvest and do the crops regarding the hemp, which is going to be the financial generator, the financial machine for the community, was a whole lot more advantageous to be done in this upcoming season as opposed to last season, which was almost not.
It was halfway over.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be fruitful 6 months ago.
No. We couldn't start the project until mid-June of this year, which meant we never would have had a mature crop. And
Right.
Since that crop is what's going to help facilitate the building of the community, it was decided to put the launch of the community off until the 1st of April 2015 so that we could actually get a crop in that we could harvest at maturity and get what the crop was worth. In the state of Colorado right now, an acre of hemp is worth $10,000 to $12,000. Our first crop will be between 20 and 25 acres. Do the math. That's what's going to facilitate the initial building and expansion of the community Earthship Solutions Colorado, which will be an Earthship's community, all done naturally, all off the grid. The only way we will actually be on the grid will be we will have the internet. Power, water, everything else will come from the community itself. And I'm not just talking about solar. We're going to be using, and this will come up as we discuss it in the beginning of next year on some other shows. We're going to be using some means to generate electricity that are very distinct and very outside the box as well.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too because, well, I don't know if you want to disclose that stuff right away, but...
No, this is something we're going to... And again, I don't want to say too much about the project until we've got the group back together and we decide exactly what we want to put forward, because we want to do it in a choreographed fashion that allows people to see it from its inception through its fruition.
Right. I'm also told Barry Prince will be with us in about 5 minutes or so. So, just so you know. Oh, another little thing for those who listen to UCY.TV radio is that Dane Wigginton also does contribute articles to the Liberty Beacon as well.
Yes. I love his articles.
On geoengineering. And I know you love Dane Wigginton's stuff.
He's done several radio shows with me, and we'll probably be doing another one again before the first of the year.
Right. Well, I hope sometime to get him on my show, too, even though he's on this network with me. I hope sometime that maybe you could persuade him to put up with me for an hour or something.
I will make that a point of... it's something I will definitely work on for you.
Because I know I've had more than one caller who has pretty much gone after me for not talking about geoengineering and stuff like this enough.
Oh, guess what we're going to talk about next Tuesday?
Let me guess. Are we going to talk about chemtrails, Roger?
No. I don't like the word chemtrails at all. When you say chemtrails, people immediately picture you with a tinfoil hat on. I got this, believe it or not, from Dane himself, okay? I prefer to use the term geoengineering because it is attached to solid scientific research. So rather than using the term chemtrails, which, like I said, most people associate with conspiracy theories, I prefer to say geoengineering or weather modification.
Right. Both things are proven factual, actual things that you can follow without a problem. And yeah, they don't have that stigma exactly that chemtrails do, in the language, as it were, but...
It's just another thing that absolutely is right. They are chemical trails across the sky. Mm-hmm. But it's just like the other term that we discussed that was given a negative connotation specifically, to discredit anybody discussing them. Chemtrails is the exact same thing. It was given a negative connotation by the government, by the powers that be, by the people who perpetrate this mechanism, so that anybody who talked about them, most people would immediately go, okay, yeah, he's a nut. But you can't call me a nut if I come up to you and say geoengineering or weather modification. Because at that point, you know in your own mind that that is based on solid scientific fact.
Absolutely. Oh, boy. And I can't wait until we do that show, Roger, because...
next week, I promise. Yeah, I've written a lot about that, and I'm actually going to bring in some of Dane's stuff, too.
Oh, excellent. Excellent, because, Dane definitely does some really, really good work. And I may not be an expert on the subject, but I happen to be able to recognize when people have actually done the research regarding subjects, whether I'm particularly knowledgeable on them or not. You can always tell when somebody has sort of, pulled together the conclusions of others without studying exactly what went into them and everything else, can't you?
Yeah, one or two questions and they fall flat on their butt.
Yep. See, but Dane doesn't have that problem. That's for sure.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. And I don't have that problem simply because I don't say anything I don't know something about. there are a lot of things I'm interested in you'll never hear me talk about until I reach a point I call the point of credibility, where I know I can talk about it, and if asked, I can I can convince people that I have done my research. There are many topics that I am still researching. I do 5 to 6 hours of research every single day of my life. And there are topics that I will be writing about and we will be discussing about in the future that you've never heard me talk about, because how many times have you heard me say, I dare you to prove me wrong? Well, I need to be in a position to survive those dares. I do. Hello?
Yep, there it goes. Okay. I clicked the mute thing to just be quiet during when you're talking, and sometimes I go to click it again and it doesn't let me back in. It's funny.
Well, where is our friend Barry? Because I'm going to have to bow out of here pretty quickly, and I don't want to leave you talking to empty air.
Well, it's okay, Roger. I'm still waiting on him. He said 5 minutes, and then he said maybe 8 minutes, but I think we're actually at that point, so I don't know. Maybe he's still held up with things. But, look, you don't have to hang around. I can carry on for a little bit. And I do appreciate all of your time, all of your work, and all the statements that you make, and of course taking the time every single Tuesday to come on with me, whether your computer's working or not. You've made time for me, so I do appreciate it. The only time that you haven't appeared on this show on Tuesdays since we started doing this is when there was technical issues that precluded you from doing so. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to somebody who is as passionate as I am about the multitude of things that are attacking humanity today. And you've heard me say this over and over again. If we were being attacked in one direction, we could say, okay, that's something we can control. That might just be a coincidence. That might be just a few evil people or greedy people who have focused together to basically benefit from our suffering. But when you look at the fact and you consider the fact that we are being attacked in so many directions, whether it's geoengineering, vaccines, GMOs, perpetual warfare, political tyranny, just about a big pharmaceutical, and I could go on, fluoride. All of these things are not only happening at the same time, but they're all either supported or protected by the very entities that we consider our last line of defense, the government which we put into power or into a position to protect us. And they're just not doing it. And when you see that the government is part of the problem, not part of the solution, then the word coincidence cannot come up in the conversation.
Oh, exactly. There is very little coincidence in the world, truly. Occasionally it happens, but most of the time it's that ugly other word that begins with a CO, which is conspiracy, and that is the truth of things.
Well, there's a lot of conspiracies in the world today, but we're just well past the point where most of them are theories anymore.
See, that's the thing. That's really the problematic word there. That comes up. It's not a theory any longer. I mean, we can back all this stuff, and a singular individual could not possibly pull off what it is we're looking at. So, by definition, it requires a conspiracy, Roger. You can't get the pharmaceutical companies doing the ugly, terrible things that they do without a whole lot of people participating. You can't get the GMO people doing what it is they do without a whole lot of participation. It's got to be all a group thing. You can't get the political tyranny without the absolute cooperation of so many individuals, and it doesn't matter which party, which name actually holds the position, because the positions are all bought and paid for. It is an absolute reality that that this is a global conspiracy, and it's just one of those things that makes me nuts. So, but anyway, Roger, I do understand that you have to bow out, and I've got like 20 minutes left, and not sure if Roger, not sure if Barry's going to join us, but hopefully he will. and we'll get to some other topics. But I do appreciate all your time, and I'm sorry if I've worn you out a little bit tonight, because usually we just barely break that first hour, and you've been on an extra 40 minutes with me, so I do appreciate it.
I have enjoyed every single minute of it, Chuck, and I always do.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to work, and I'll close out this broadcast one way or another. Probably remind people of a couple of other things they can look at. And, I'm wondering where else I should go, because I'll probably stick with the Liberty Beacon for an article or two, trying to think of where I should go. Did you see that thing about the potatoes yesterday, by the way?
No.
Oh, okay. Because you were talking about GMOs on the air on your show. And you were talking about food and the corn, and I found it fascinating. But of course, there was the story which had been published just yesterday regarding these supposedly healthier for you potatoes that are genetically modified so that they are a little bit preventative in regards to cancer. And of course, who's going to be the largest recipient of these new GMO potatoes? But McDonald's. Yeah. So your French fries will cause you less cancer than they used to because we've genetically modified them. Ay. Well, anyway.
Don't even get me started on that, because I'll be here for another 2 hours.
Exactly.
And yes, I did see about the French fries. I just wasn't sure what you were talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mentioned that on my little 1 hour rant. Looks like I've actually got Barry Prince with us.
Is he?
Yeah, he's here.
There you are.
Oh my God! If I ever get to be as old as you, I hope I'm not as slow as you.
All right, friend. It's nice talking to you too again, Roger. Don't you have something to do now?
Oh, for everybody.
No, I thought you were going to rant. You just said you wanted to rant for another 2 hours, and that wouldn't be a bad thing.
For everybody who's listening, there is no disrespect intended to my friend Barry Prince. He is one of the most awake, aware, and free-speaking individuals I have ever run into. And Barry, it is always a pleasure to talk with you. But I am going to bow out. I do have things to do, and I think you and Chuck could probably make very good use of this last 20 minutes.
Thanks for the kind words, Roger, and always a slice talking to you.
All right. Bye, Chuck. Bye, right. Barry. Have a great night.
You too, Roger.
Take care. Roger Landry, again, everybody, the founder and, of course, one of the main ranting voices of the Liberty Beacon, as well as one of the biggest producers of articles, etc., etc. The guy who has brought so many of us together under the Liberty Beacon banner. And like I said, go to thelibерtybeacon.com, and you can just start there, and it's endless what you can research, what you can learn, what you can read about, commentary, factual articles with all sorts of links, wonderful stuff, and many, many projects, a whole lot of irons in the flame. Well,
absolutely.
Barry Prince, how are you tonight, sir? Of course, you have your show on Shake and Wake Radio right now. When the Liberty Beacon Radio Project expands a little more, you'll be on there as well as soon as we can sort out what day you'll be able to do, because I'd rather have you live, because I do love the spontaneity when you start talking, and love hearing what's on your mind, because, well, you kind of have a thought process almost like mine, except, of course, you're a bit smarter, and that's no insult to you. No insult to you, but that's...
What are you talking about, buddy? Who are you talking about? Me?
Yeah, you.
You must be talking about somebody else. No, I'm actually glad. I'm in a better mood now because, the grandchildren were over to visit here, and I raise kids myself, and it's a great thing when grandchildren come to visit because I know they're going to leave. and my patience, I find now, my patience with little children is, there's a little bit left there, but it was nothing like when I was raising them myself. So it was great to see the grandchildren, but it's great to see them go too.
Well, I'm not quite at that level where I'm a grandparent yet. Although I am getting a little tired of people asking me if my newborn is my grandbaby, because in my 40s, I guess this is about the time that you become a grandparent sometimes. At least in the area where I live.
Yeah.
And yeah. But I'm I'm not a grandpa yet, but
well, I used to think growing up, boy, grandpa. I used to say that. Wow, I was ever old. Eh? Here I am. So I just say to people, well, you know what? Enjoy life because it goes by you really quick, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're old and wrinkled, and it's gotten by you. So enjoy every day of it. That's all I got to say.
You got it.
It goes by quick, Charles. It's like bang, bang, bang now, man. But,
listen, man, I totally did not catch up with that show on Sunday because I was involved in a fiasco regarding the broke down vehicle and all that, so I wasn't anywhere near my computer. How did that show go?
Awesome. Dan is a true spokesman, man, a true warrior, and we had a very, very good, great conversation, Charles. And he's definitely going to be joining me in the very near future. He's going to make his shows available to any network that really wants to carry him, and I'm going to be talking to you about that here after the show, or when we get a chance, we'll chat about it. But yeah, Dan's an awesome guy, man, and glad that he could take some time out and share some thoughts with us because he is a busy guy and quite a campaigner. He's got his own record, he's got his own radio show going, and if anybody hasn't listened to what Dan has to say, I urge you to go on the internet and have a look at a few of his videos. I know he's tied to InfoWars, and of course that brings in the question of background and stuff like that. But I've had a real good talk with the guy, Charles, and I really like what the man has to say. So it was a great show, but today was even better. I actually today got into a show, Charles, that was kind of spontaneous because one of my friends I've developed a really good friendship is a gentleman named Dr. David Bruce Allen. He's a cardiologist in America, and he is one of the leaders right now in the world in research on the endocannabinoid system in the human body. He's been researching it for 15, almost 16 years. But I was having a conversation with him on Skype, and another radio station, they were actually talking about that, and there was a bunch of herpetologists on the station, so I pulled them in, and we got into a random conversation, buddy, and I'll tell you, one of the best shows I've done in a long time. It was just right off the wall. Great information. Some of the things he's doing, man, he's got letters published right now. People can look him up. His name is Dr. David Bruce Allen, but he's got letters now published in 8 different countries on the effects, absolute undeniable effects of cannabinoids on the Ebola virus. So if there's something you might want to look into, Charles, I'll get you some information on that. I have to go back to there and find it. Maybe I can find the link right now and give it to you, but really, really incredible information we've shared today, and I'm going to get him on one of your shows here, buddy, really quick. He'll do any time on the air that he gets a chance to talk about the cannabinoid system. So, great show today. And then, of course, I got into a Chagga rant.
Well, yeah, I figured you would go there because once we start talking about the benefits of the natural herbs and stuff, of course, the mushrooms are the next logical step. And that's something that you kind of enlightened me about because I wasn't really aware of. Well, I was aware of some uses for mushrooms, but they were usually, more fun than healthy. But
okay, I've been there, done that. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
See, all right, we'll leave that there. But
through the fields of Vancouver. Exactly. But yeah, no, actually, it kind of got into that conversation because I brought him to his attention there about a month ago, some of the information about Chag, and he went and looked at it. And if you look at a scale now, Charlie, if you look at a scale of antioxidants of known plants in this world, and they tested them all, Chaga is like a mountain above the nearest competitor. So it is the highest known antioxidant plant known to nature today, and that alone speaks volumes, Charles, for what it does to the human cell, antioxidants, chasing free radicals, blah, blah, blah. Incredible stuff. So anyways, that was a great conversation today, and I've talked about Chaga before on your show, and I keep urging people to do research into it. If you get your hands on it, please get it into your body. That's how I feel about that today, Charles.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something that I urge people to take a look at. And of course, any of these natural remedies, any of them, there are tons of them. I mean, even the pine needles that exist around us are useful in one way or another. There are a whole lot of natural alternatives that people do need to look at. Of course, we don't have a lot of time to break all that down, but anything that we can do to disconnect ourselves from the greater pharmaceutical industrial complex is definitely worth looking into, because they do not create healthy people in any way, shape, or form. What they do is create repeat customers and people with addictions to their poisons. And at the end of the day, that's really what it is, because if you ever notice, when they give you a pill for something, you then need another pill to deal with the so-called side effects of that pill, and so on and so on, until after a while you're taking 10 or 15 medications. And
and by the way, those toxins store in your body for how long? Up to 10 years, and they interact with the other toxins. And of course, America being the slimmest nation in the world now, Charles, those toxins have nowhere to store in body fat anywhere on American people. It's a sad state, it really is.
Oh yeah, wonderfully. They're wonderfully stored in the body for later use.
Yeah.
So even if
they all store. You know what the thing about it, Charles? They all store in the same place, so they have friends and neighbors to hang out with. You know what I mean?
Well, listen. As long as they're not feeling lonely, it's all good, right? Oh man.
Drives you nuts, doesn't it, buddy? Absolute insanity. It is. Gotta laugh about it, because if we don't laugh, Charles, I find if I don't get a good laugh in once in a while about this stuff, I will go absolutely insane. I'll climb through the microphone, go down to Washington, and grab somebody by the throat or go over. You see the reports. You see that this is absolutely mandated now. That Rogers, I'm sure, more aware of it. What the CDC is saying right on their website, Charles, about the connection between vaccines and autism in children. Did you read that report? That's one you might want to have a look at. They're admitting it now, absolutely outright admitting, the CDC is absolutely admitting that outright that children that are vaccinated have 350% better chance of developing autism than children that aren't vaccinated.
Well,
that's just a statement they have to make now, Charles, because the info's coming out.
Yeah, well, it's impossible to ignore. I think that's the one about the MMR vaccine only, right? That's where they're admitting that's where the problem is.
I better rectify and make sure I'm saying the right thing. I'm not sure about that, Charles. I thought it was a little bit more wide scale than that, but I better check my notes before I say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a whole lot more widespread. But of course, the adjutants that are in these things, the so-called preservatives that are utilized, which are not even effective preservatives, if you speak to any chemist regarding stuff like thimerosal and et cetera. I guess I'm not aware of exactly that report. I saw that a report was going to come out, but I guess I didn't read the actual report yet myself. So, yeah, I don't want to comment on it too much.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, well, I did go get the local the flu vaccine for this North Coast here. I went and got the ingredients from Shoppers Drug Mart. Of course, thimerosal is in there, a couple others that my son broke down on his computer, and he kind of came back to me with just kind of a stunned look on his face on some of the things that are in there. He says, "I've never put this in my children's body ever again, Dad." So there you go. That was a good day. People are waking up to it, Charles, en masse. And so they should be, because it's just such a crime against humanity.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, I state all the time that I was rather ill-informed, and my 12-year-old, who now shows all sorts of signs along the spectrum, et cetera, which it is his birthday today, by the way, and he got all the vaccines. In 2002, I did exactly what the doctors told me to do, and followed through that way. And I watched a serious change in him with my own eyes, and did not realize that that's what was doing it. Yeah, definitely. My 4-month-old right now, though, perfectly healthy, perfectly alert, perfectly aware. They did stick him with the vitamin K on his way out of the hospital, because we did need a hospital to birth him. But outside of that, he has not been tainted by all these poisons, and I think he's going to be better for it. At least that's my judgment at this point.
And
well, I think anybody with an education would share that opinion with Charles. I mean, there's just too much information out there now for people to ignore the facts. And I just say to people that it's your responsibility as a parent bringing a child into the world. They have no control what's going into their body, but you do. And it's your responsibility as an adult and a parent to look at this information. Even if there's a murmur of something wrong with these things and you're thinking about putting it in your child's body, I know as a parent, I'd want to go look at it, Charles. Yeah. I sure don't want to hurt him, you know?
Well, exactly.
I'm sure if you'd have heard that prior to your child being subjected to that crap, you would have put a stop to it. But there you go. So many people are so blind.
Well, exactly. And, I don't want to comment on it too much more deeply because, believe me, it really hurts me.
I'm sorry, Charles. I'm not trying to open up a bad wound there, and I know I sent it, buddy, so I'm sorry for bringing that up again. But, yeah, it absolutely drives me nuts, Charles. I shed tears for children all the time when I think about the thousands and thousands of children that are coming into our world right now with disorders before they come out of the womb. And that just drives me nuts, buddy. We're going to be dealing with this for the next couple of generations of children that are being affected. If we stop it all now, Charles. If we stop it all now.
Even if it stops today, we're still going to deal with this residual effect for some time to come. Look, I've only got about 4 minutes left, Barry, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And, if there's anything else you want to kind of get off your chest, I'll shut up and let you run.
Well, just one other thing, buddy, I'll tell you, talking with Dr. Allen today, and what I'm seeing in some of the reports I've just read here in the last couple of days on reports coming around the world, buddy, about the incredible effects of the healing properties of cannabinoids in the human body. I just urge people to look more and more and more of that every time they get a chance. The implications are unbelievable for our society, for our world. It's one of the biggest answers I think we have to all the problems we're facing right now as society, as a human race. And that's all. I'll end it with that, Charles. Always great to join in for a few minutes and share a few thoughts, buddy. Have a great day, and thanks for having me on.
Listen, I really appreciate it, and I'll tell you what, if that doctor wants to come on, I'll give him 2 hours to discuss that, because I don't think I've ever done a dedicated program about the cannabinoid system, about the real possibilities. I've mentioned it. I've talked about supporting legalization. I've talked about the ridiculousness behind this, the history behind it, and all that, but I've never actually sat and discussed what the specific benefits are regarding it. So, I mean, I'd love to have somebody on, or regarding this. So, if you want to throw somebody my way, believe me, I will make time for them for sure.
Okay, Charles, I'll see what I can do for you, brother. Thanks again,
Hey, no problem. And Barry Prince again is on Shake and Wake Radio on Sundays. And do you have, what's that?
3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Exactly. Which is, the big puzzle. I think I got it right that time.
Yeah, you did, Charles. After 18 or 19 tries, we finally got her down, buddy.
Well, I have to, because I always think of the pieces and everything else, so I think it has to be in there. But no, it is the big puzzle with Barry Prince, and definitely a guy, another one of these guys that I definitely endorse, and not because he's simply connected to the Liberty Beacon, but because again, I just consider him to be one of the more intelligent voices out there who has a great deal to say, and I'm so happy that you could join me, Barry. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Anytime, Charles. Have a great day, buddy.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. So, what did we learn tonight? Well, who knows? Maybe I've just been preaching to the choir. Maybe you guys don't recognize anything new coming out of this discussion. But I do believe that's the first time I've gotten Roger Landry to discuss Zionism on the air. So I guess that's a marked change in things. Of course, I would love to go into a whole lot more of these topics, and Barry unfortunately couldn't join me until a little bit later in the show. I will at some point do a show on cannabinoids. I will at some point do a show on geoengineering, since Roger says I should correct that from the chemtrails moniker, which I've laid on it before. And I want to thank everybody for listening on UCY.TV radio, UCY.TV/TOE, in case you're catching this further downstream. If you want to email me with a little more hate mail like you guys did after Saturday night's show, go right ahead. CHUCK1972 at lycos.com is my email. If you want to reach me via Skype, it is charles.ochelli. If you can figure out how to spell the name, then you're there. Also, I do that Liberty Beacon show, which is also called The Ochelli Effect, but it's a 1-hour show where I just simply rant all by myself. This show I usually try to bring on different guests, and we have different discussions trying to further the sort of lexicon of knowledge, to further the lexicon of terminology, to further the discussion, to bring about a change in your mentality, in your psychology, in your thought processes, so that you can possibly pull away the veil and see the world around you, not the distorted and greater matrix which has been erected to keep you entertained and distracted. So that is that for tonight. Thank you so much. The Ochelli Effect is done. Stay tuned to UCY.TV. Ribbit. Bye.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, that guy, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know what that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have